so I gave up teaching. I don't know if I hadn't been doing this whether I would have kept teaching, or I think there's a kind of a shelf life on teaching. After a while, I don't know if you can be a good teacher for a long time because it's repetitive.
Mm-hmm. Unless you improve or change.
Well, you change, but also there's your heart is broken over and over again in teaching, because every new group of students who come to you fall in love with, and then they leave. And you can only go through that so many times without protecting yourself and maybe holding back a bit. And once you start doing that, you're not teaching on the emotional level. You're not deeply connecting with people, and then you're not as good a teacher as you once were.
Now, were you teaching at the high school or college level?
I was teaching at a university. Okay. I was a professor at Ryerson University.
Okay. And where's Ryerson?
Ryerson's in Toronto.
Okay.
I was teaching journalism.
Okay. Yeah, I've been talking to some journalist friends, and a friend of mine who used to teach journalism at Ball State until just last year, and we were talking about the face of journalism has changed so much that newspaper reporters are now carrying these things around. Mm. You know, and they're doing little quick interviews that goes on the sidebar of the website where their story appears. So it's no longer one of these and going back later to the office to type it. They're multimedia journalists now, and Ball State's offering a whole master's degree in digital storytelling just because of how much it's changed.
Yeah, it's different.
Now, are you finding that maybe for your own show and the things that you're doing, you're starting to change a little bit, or you're starting to do more because of the internet? Like, you have a podcast now, and yeah, 3-4 years ago you didn't.
We have the podcast. We have a Facebook page. We have, but that doesn't really affect what I do, because I'm the guy I'm the writing guy, you know, and I still spend. The heavy lifting for me is sitting in front of a blank piece of paper, blank screen, trying to make up the story, and that doesn't change. You know, the writing part hasn't changed at all. It's still just me and a keyboard. I used to write on a typewriter. Now I write on a computer. So that's changed. That's the only technological thing that's really affected me in any big way, and I don't know whether that's affected my writing or not. It's easier, maybe. I don't know if it's any better.
Now, have you changed maybe your writing style as the technologies, or your process? I used to write my columns in my notebook before I took it to the computer. Now,
yeah, well, you see, I've always worked for this show here, the Vinyl Cafe. I've been on a computer. We've been doing it for 17 years. I've been on a computer longer than that. So it's always been on the computer. I don't know whether there are those from the generation ahead of me who would tell you that they felt they were more thoughtful on typewriter, because it was harder process. You know, you didn't want to keep retyping the damn thing, so they would tell you that they wrote slower and wrote more. The first drafts were closer to the final draft. I'd probably do more drafts than I might have done if I was just working on a typewriter, which is probably helpful. It probably makes the stuff better, easier to move stuff around. You know, I don't have to use a pair of scissors and Scotch tape and all that jazz.
Right. Now, do you? I had heard you describe the process, and I don't remember if you did this on one of your studio shows or if it was you and I talking. But before one of the David Morley stories goes on the air, you'll edit it a few times, and then you'll read it out in front of an audience, a live audience, at a show like today, and Jess will be taking notes, and you tweak that a couple times before it becomes a live story.
Yeah, it starts actually with a phone call. Stories all begin with a phone call. 80% of my stories start with a phone call with my editor. As the years go by, it gets harder and harder to write a story. You'd think it would get easier and easier. You'd think you'd know what you're doing, and you just sit down and knock it off. What happens is that you're knocking them off for a number of years, and you're knocking off singles. And then one day, through a alignment of the stars or some fluke of some sort. You hit a double. And now you're not happy unless you get to second base every time you write a story. Then you get a triple, then it's a home run. And so you're expecting yourself to write a home run every time, and that's hard to do. And so there's a lot of inertia at work. I don't want to, because the mountain gets higher all the time. I don't want to climb the mountain again. But a phone call is an easy thing to do. You know, so I start by phoning my editor, and we just talk about it, which anybody can do. Anybody can talk is cheap. But that conversation is usually enough to get me going. It gives me a roadmap. We just throw out possibilities. I want to write a story about dolls. It's the one I'm working on now. And I had an idea where Morley could find a doll in the basement in an old box that was her favorite doll, and it would send her off into a reverie of her childhood. The conversation shifted the story a bit because Meg asked what would happen if she found the doll in the box in her basement, and she didn't remember it. That's the kind of thing that happens during this conversation. So I come out of the conversation with an idea of sorts, maybe even a roadmap, maybe a beginning, middle, and an end. That gets me going, and I write the first draft, and then the second, third, fourth, whatever. Usually I'm writing through it every day. I'll go back to the beginning every day and work my way, kind of warm up by writing through the first 500 words, and then that propels me on to the next 500. The next day I start out with 0 again and write through the first 1,000. So I'm you know, by the time I give it to my editor for the first look at, it's probably on draft 8 or 9 anyway.
Oh, really?
And then she and I go back and forth, probably with 5 or 6 additional drafts.
Okay.
And then when we get it to is when either one or two things happen: we run out of time, or we got it to where we're happy. And then we start telling it in front of audiences, and the more audiences we can before we record it, the better. And every day it becomes a collaboration. It starts as a collaboration between me and my editor, then it becomes a collaboration with me and my imagination, and then finally it becomes a collaboration with me and my audience. And you learn so much from the way they receive it. You know, you just tell either in the silences, in the intensity of listening, in the rhythm of the laughter, how you're doing. And then we tweak the story. The story that I'm telling today started as 30 pages, and it's now down to 20 pages. We've cut 10 pages out of it in the last 3 or 4 performances. Just tweaking it and learning how to make it better. So it's 1 in 3 words, a lot.
Yeah. So when you rewrite the 1,000 words, do you just close the old document and start again, or do you just kind of fix what is already there?
No, I fix what's already there. I open a document, and I write 500 words the first day, and then the second day I open the document and work my way through those first 500 words. I'm massaging the words. Sometimes I'm just reading them. Nothing changes.
Okay. I know some people who they will shut the document and write 1,000 words again, and they remember what they wrote, and that's in their head as they're writing, but they don't look at what they just finished. Now, how many stories do you do a year?
10.
Okay.
10 new stories a year, give or take. You know, sometimes 9, sometimes 11, but we shoot for 10 new stories a year.
Okay. And then all 10 of those go on a recording. Like at the end of the year, you get a new recording.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then, what are you doing the rest of the time?
I'm on the road. You know, we're on the road 100 days a year, 150 days a year. I'm on the road. I'm writing essays. I'm recording shows. I waste a lot of time. You know, living a life, paying bills.
Yeah. Do you have family?
Yeah, I have grown boys.
Okay. Yeah. I thought you'd mentioned it in a story once. Mentioned one of them, so I was never sure.
Yeah, I have 2 boys.
How old is Dave?
Young. He's my age, but he's younger than me. He has aging. All of them are aging, but they seem to be aging slightly slower than we do.
Sort of like The Simpsons. Bart Simpson has been 10 for 30 years now?
No, not like The Simpsons, because they're not stuck in time.
Mm-hmm.
They're moving through time, moving maybe a little slower than we are.
Okay. Do you have a story arc, like
No.
a plan of?
No, I don't know that's one of the things that keeps me interested in keeping on writing, is only way I can figure out what's going to happen in their lives, and their lives interest me so much, is by writing it. And it's very episodic, the things that I write, and the arc of their life is being written by the episodes that I write.
Okay. So no plans that Tommy and Stephanie might get married, or?
I wonder about these things. I wonder if what will happen with Tommy and Steffi. I wonder what will happen with Dave and Morley's health, and the health of the people around them, and what will happen to the kids. But I don't have plan. I know these things will change, but I don't know how they'll change. It feels very real to me. They feel like they're real out there, and I'm learning about them by writing about them.
Do you ever read For Better or For Worse? Lynn,
yeah,
I can't remember.
Lynn, yeah, she's a fan, and I'm a fan of hers.
Oh, really?
But she's not doing that anymore.
No, I know. She stopped one
Yeah.
day. She said, I'm going back to when Michael and Elizabeth were kids.
I think they're just rerunning the old stuff.
No, I remember reading, she said they're going to not age anymore.
Oh, really?
She said, I can't come up with storylines where people are going to get old, so I want to go back to the beginning, and she's redoing old, the old characters.
I understand that. She doesn't want them to die.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. I've thought the same thing of going back to Dave's youth. It's very interesting. Didn't understand the impulse quite as much as I do right now, but I understand why she would do that.
Now, Arthur died, didn't he?
Arthur the dog died, yeah.
And I don't remember hearing that story.
You missed it. It was there.
Probably missed it, yeah. So, and I've never heard David and Morley's last name. Do they have one?
They must.
You've never...
We know that Dave's mother's name is Margaret McNeil, but we're not sure we don't know whether that was her maiden name or her married name. Yeah, I was never able to come up with a name that made me happy, so I just left it.
Not McLean.
Not McLean, no.
Okay. So what else? What are your plans for, I guess, the next year or two? Do you have any big goals on the horizon?
No, just keep the thing moving. Keep it rolling. Keep it. Not let it slip. Just keep making it better, and keep trying hard, and doing new things with it, and not coasting. Yeah, just keep struggling. I want it to stay a struggle. I don't want it to get, I don't want to start coasting with it.
All right, well, it's 1:45. I want to honor your time. So.
Okay, fine.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you so